If you've been tuned into the podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about sleep paralysis and how it can be used as a launchpad for an astral projection adventure. I feel like we should dive into that some more, especially with the thinning of the veil that's going to be happening now that we're transitioning into autumn, and many of us are beginning to transition into a type of hibernation season. We're spending less time outside because it's colder and there's less daylight, spending more time cozied up and potentially not being as physically active as we are during the summer. Or is that just me? Either way, it's a perfect opportunity to practice astral projection. Hey, I'm April, and we are on a witchful journey. You've heard about astral projection, right? I mean, at this rate, who hasn't? Astral projection made its way into mainstream media in the 1970s, fueled by a growing interest in New Age spirituality and parapsychology. Things like hypnosis, telepathy, psychokinesis, and mediumship, to name a few. Even the US military and the CIA are reported to have done large amounts of research on it into the 80s. More recently, movies like Doctor Strange and Behind Her Eyes have brought astral projection into a new audience, along with social media. It's also been referred to as an OBE, or out-of-body experience. But how New Age is astral projection? I actually don't like to use the term New Age, because some of the spiritual practices that fall under that umbrella are actually quite old. And the term feels like it's taken on a dismissive vibe. I get where the name comes from, and that's something that we'll talk about at another time, because I don't want to get too off topic today. But personally, and it's fine if you don't feel the same way, I personally feel like over time the original idea of this coming of a new age has been sort of bastardized, if that makes sense. Like, oh, that's a New Age belief, or those are New Age practices. So it's not a term that I generally use. But getting back to whether or not astral projection is New Age, it's not. I mean, the name is. The name astral projection was coined by a 19th century mystical system called Theosophy, and popularized by Helena Blavatsky in the late 1800s. She was also very much into the idea of the coming of a new age of enlightenment. According to Theosophy, humans have 7 bodies, ranging from the lowest, the physical body, to the highest spiritual and mental bodies. In this, the third body is the astral body. The concept of astral projection, though, is ancient. It has long been believed by many cultures around the world that humans have the ability to leave their physical bodies during sleep states. The terms that were used probably were closer to terms like soul travel, soul wandering, or spirit journey. Ancient Egypt, the Amazonian peoples, many of the Native American tribes, ancient Hindu scriptures, ancient Japan, ancient Taoist practices, Judaic and Christian scripture, and Western esotericism all either mention or practice it. Ancient Egyptians believed that the soul was made up of many parts, Ka being the spiritual essence of a person, or their life force, and was capable of leaving the body to travel to other realms. Pharaohs and priests were thought to be especially skilled at astral travel and were taught how to use it to communicate with gods and goddesses. The Amazonian people have spiritual traditions where soul flight is used by shamanic practitioners for communicating with ancestors and other spirits, diagnosing illnesses, and seeking knowledge that will benefit the community. Many of the Native American tribes practice spiritual traditions that include a concept similar to astral projection for the purpose of communing with spirits, gaining knowledge, and healing. The ancient Hindu scriptures say that the body is composed of different layers that correspond to different levels of consciousness. The subtle body, or the linga sharira, is the intermediate for the physical body and the innermost consciousness. It has the ability to leave the physical body and travel to different realms and gain spiritual knowledge. According to Hindu scripture, everyone possesses the natural ability to do this, but you can develop that further with spiritual practice and discipline. Ancient Japanese culture has a belief in the Ikiryo, which is a concept similar to astral projection, but is often connected to intense emotions or distressed mental states, but is also sometimes connected to extreme illness and comatose states. Ikiryo is the manifestation of a spirit that temporarily leaves the body, which is different from the spirit that leaves the body at death. The belief is that the Ikiryo sometimes has the ability to affect the physical world. It can cause harm or possess another physical thing, whether it's a person or an object, but it's not inherently malevolent. The Taoist philosophy, the Shen or the soul spirit essence, is separate from the physical body, or the Jing. The Shen has the ability to leave the Jing and travel to other realms or dimensions. It's closely tied to the concept of shamanic journeying, to communicate with spirits and gain knowledge. Taoist texts mention dream yoga, which is basically the practice of mind awake, body asleep. Both Judaism and Christianity, and actually Islam as well, forbid the voluntary involvement of spiritual practices such as astral projection or soul flight, and the reasoning seems to be connected to control. And by that I mean, if you're not the one controlling or you're not the one volunteering for the soul flight or the projection, then it's fine, because it's God's or Yahweh's or Allah's will. It's when a person makes the decision to incorporate it into their spiritual practices that it becomes evil and forbidden, and kind of seen as arrogant. I guess because it's supposed to be a power that only God or Yahweh or Allah, depending on the religion, is supposed to have. When it comes to Western esotericism, which is basically just the broad academic term for non-mainstream spirituality, astral projection is the intentional separation of the astral body from the physical body in pursuit of spiritual insight, self-awareness, personal growth, deeper understanding, and in some traditions, accessing higher knowledge such as the Akashic records. But for the most part, everyone seems to agree that astral projection or some form of intentional spirit flight is a meditative spiritual practice, regardless of whether or not they agree on its usefulness. There are generally two descriptions when it comes to astral projection. Those are 1, journeying to other worlds as a body of light, and 2, non-physical travel around the physical world. In the scientific community, the practice falls under pseudoscience because there isn't a way to either prove or disprove that astral projection exists. Like, there isn't a way to prove or disprove that the conscious mind is able to leave the physical body. Though there is the Monroe Institute. Its headquarters are in Virginia, but there are a number of branch locations worldwide. The Monroe Institute was founded by Robert Monroe in 1971. I will absolutely talk about him more at another time, but the reason I mention him and the Monroe Institute now is because they are the leading center for exploring and experiencing expanded states of consciousness. They offer things like paid programs and free meditation material, but they are also continuously researching things like intuition, manifestation, consciousness, meditation, OBEs, etc. And it was Robert Monroe's desire to research into the dream experience that largely contributed to what we as the public know of astral projection today. Now, you may have heard that there are some dangers to astral projection. The level of danger that people claim there is ranges from 0 to don't fucking do it. I'm going to tell you what the claims are and then give you a bit of my own experiences. Well, maybe just one, for now. So one of the things that people claim in terms of dangers in astral projection is the fear of the body being inhabited by some other entity while you're traveling in the astral plane. Some people claim that when you astral project, you are basically leaving your shell empty, and at that point the body can be possessed by a demon, another person who's astral projecting, or some other spirit or entity. There are people who have reported encountering some very unsavory and sinister beings on the astral plane, but as for the physical body being possessed, if it's possible, it certainly isn't an easy thing to do. If that's something that you're afraid will happen, it's not hard to put protections in place before you begin. You can start with placing protection on the room your physical form will be in, which can be a circle of salt, using background music that contains protection frequencies. Some of those would be 1111 Hz, 999 Hz, 963 Hz, and 7.83 Hz. Those seem to be the go-to ones. You can also wear spiritual protection on your actual physical body as well. These can be runic symbols, wearing black tourmaline or black obsidian for protection, and wearing amethyst or labradorite to keep you in a higher vibrational state, which tends to deter those creepy crawly, not so nice beings. I tend to lead toward better to be prepared than ill-equipped. So while I don't necessarily think that possession is a concern, because it's not something I've ever dealt with, I'd rather be safe about it, you know? Grounding yourself before and after an astral travel session is recommended because it helps you get into the right mindset for a better astral travel experience. And afterward, helps you fully come back to this plane of existence. Doing a cleansing along with grounding afterward is also a great idea. Journaling your experiences is a great way to get a feel for any patterns that happen to emerge. And be rid of the fear. It seems to be kind of like a beacon. If you're afraid you'll encounter the creepies when you project, that's what will find you more than not. I'm not trying to scare anyone into not trying it if you're curious and want to learn more. I just don't want anyone going into it with concrete expectations of how it's going to be. There's still a lot that we don't know about astral projection. It's a vast plane with multiple levels or realms. And yes, you may have an astral experience that's unpleasant, but in general, the physical dangers are pretty much the same as when you're sleeping. Before I move on to the next one, I do want to note that when you do your own research on this, because I do expect you to do your own research as well, don't just listen to me. I'm of the opinion that you should try to stay away from sources that clearly have never consciously or intentionally astral projected before. I say this because it's similar to scuba diving. You wouldn't take instruction from someone who hasn't ever personally dived before, would you? You would want to hear from and be instructed by people who have experience in scuba diving, so they can give you tips that are tried and true, and methods that work, and they can tell you how it feels and what you can try if something feels off. You know what I mean? Although I admit I have done some research looking at the topic from other points of view just so I can try to understand those points of view a little more. But I didn't start doing that until much later. Okay, so moving on to the next fear of danger when it comes to astral projection. A question that comes up a lot is, can I die in the astral realm? And if I do, will I actually die? That isn't something that I have any personal experience with. If that has ever happened to someone, then I don't think we would know. It would probably just appear that the person passed away in their sleep. Obviously, there aren't any records of instances where death in the astral realm has happened. At least, none that I've ever found. It might be possible, but probably not. I've heard accounts of people being attacked during astral travel, and they just kind of pop back into their bodies. No worse for wear. Another question is, can I get lost? The short answer is no. At least, that's not something I've ever experienced, and of all the accounts of experiences that I've read or listened to, none of them say anything about getting lost either. You may have heard of the silver cord. This is one of the theories or beliefs that exist as a reason why no one ever gets lost. There are some that believe that there's a silver cord, or a life thread, that is attached to both the physical and the astral bodies. Going back to can you die really quickly, there's also the belief that should this silver cord or life thread be severed, you will die. We'll go in more depth on that at another time, because I do want to look at where that stems from. But for now, I just want to mention it so that we can see one of the reasons why people say you can't get lost on the astral plane. The idea is that you should be able to follow the silver cord back to your physical body. Another reason people say you can't get lost is because you should know exactly where your physical body is. Like, you know where your home is. Even if you travel outside of the country, you still know where you live. So it's kind of just a matter of navigating back home that way rather than wandering around looking for a street sign to tell you what road to take. If you're getting pretty skilled at astral projection, which takes time and practice because traveling purposefully in the astral realm is not a piece of cake, you can also just pop around just by the use of a thought. So if you end up starting to feel lost, all you have to do is think of your physical body and you should be able to just poof, right there you are. There's your body, you're home, you know? Another concern is protection. Is it necessary? I mean, it won't hurt anything to have protections in place, like I said before. It's always better to play it safe with that. Try to keep your mindset positive, get rid of as much fear as you can, and if you've worked with spirit guides before, try asking them to assist you or guide you, or simply protect you while you're in the astral realm. There are a few legitimate danger points that I don't think people pay as much attention to when looking into astral projection and whether or not they want to explore it. So I want to make sure that I mention those because they are really important. The first one is psychological effects. This one is incredibly important, so I'm going to try to convey this as best I can. If you are someone who has a history of struggle with things like anxiety, depression, energy sensitivity, or any form of unstable emotional states or mental states, I don't recommend attempting astral travel without having a spiritual mentor with you. There are things that can pop up while you're in the astral realm that you may be triggered by, or information that you obtain that changes your whole perspective on a particular thing. It's best to have someone with you who can help you prepare beforehand, and who can help you work through anything that you may need to work through afterward. They can also be there to help you ground yourself afterward, which is incredibly important, just like with all other spiritual practices. I say this one is important because if you go in with the probability for negative thoughts to come into your mind, then the experience will likely be much less pleasant. So your psychological state can have an effect on what you experience in the astral realm. On the flip side of that, grounding yourself after an astral travel experience is so important, because a person can end up being disoriented afterward. In other words, the astral realm can have an effect on your psychological state if you don't take the time to ground yourself after a session. And working off of that is the second one, exhaustion. It is possible to exhaust yourself both physically and spiritually if you intentionally astral project too often. It's very draining, and many practitioners say that they feel as if they could sleep for a day or two after a session. Frequency is the next one. Astral projection can easily end up being used as a coping mechanism or a form of escapism, especially for those who have had recent trauma or who feel as if they are unable to improve their lives in any other way. It has the potential to become an obsession, because the experience is unlike anything someone would have during their regular daily life. This is another reason why it's so important to consistently check in with yourself about your mental and emotional state. It's also a great idea to ask yourself the why every now and then. If you're engaging in the practice of astral projection for the purposes of just getting away from things in your waking life, then it's probably not for you at this time. Another side of the frequency part of it is the potential for someone to intentionally astral travel so often that they have a hard time distinguishing between the physical world and the astral plane. There ends up being a bit of a confused disconnect, and the physical world ends up feeling a bit fake. This is another reason why it's so important to use grounding techniques after each session. Now, I promised to share one of my experiences with you. Before I do that, I do want to leave a little warning that this is a little bit creepy, and this isn't how all experiences go. But it is one that I feel I should share because it's how they can potentially go. So this was in the first couple months of 2024. I had woken up from a dream in the middle of the night, not sure what the dream was, but I was wide awake and just couldn't fall back asleep. I got up and stepped outside for a bit. When I finally went back to bed, I still wasn't fully tired enough to fall asleep, so I decided to meditate. At some point, I slipped into a mind-awake, body-asleep state. I kept hearing sounds, so I got up, and at this point, I was in the astral plane, but was unaware of it, because I hadn't intended to do this. Some of you may know that sometimes it's very difficult to separate meditation, lucid dreaming, and an astral projection. Anyway, I got out of bed and walked through the rooms to the dining room, and this is one of the ways that you can tell if you're on the astral plane. Things in your home are exactly as they are in your waking physical life. There just might be some slight variations. It was dark, just as it would be if I'd been physically standing in the dining room. I was listening for the sounds that I'd heard previously, but instead I heard a creaking sound coming from upstairs. I went to look up the stairwell and caught sight of a shape pushing open the door and entering into the kids' room at the top of the stairs. I ran up the stairs and grabbed at this being, and it kind of swirled itself into a cloud of smoke and kind of funneled itself under the door to the opposite room. I went to shout at it to come out and face me, but the words didn't come out of my mouth. It was more like a loud thought. The being flung the door open with a screech, no longer looking like a cloud of smoke, but more like a shadow, and bolted for the kids' room. I quickly stuck my foot in the doorway just as the shape was about to close the door completely. I can't really tell you why, but I had this overwhelming feeling of, I can't lose this being. I can't let it just roam around the house. I have to get it out. It needs to go. So I started pushing on the door to get it wide enough for me to squeeze into the room. I had to work at it and actually use the leverage that I had with the door frame. And I finally got into the kids' room, which was even darker than the rest of the house, except despite the darkness, I could see the being with pretty good clarity. I don't really know how to explain how I was able to see this thing. Like, the best way I can describe the how is kind of like a combination of he glowed, and I had a mental image almost telepathically projected to me, and night vision, if that makes any sense at all. I had never encountered something like this before. Anyway, I had come face to face with a being who, now no longer a shadow form, but appeared to be a male, not much taller than me, with auburn red hair, a close-cut beard, blue eyes, and he was wearing a black suit. At this point, he was standing almost in the middle of the room, facing me. His expression was meant to intimidate. I know he could tell I wasn't afraid of him, and all he said to me was, "I'm here for your children." Except he didn't speak the words out of his mouth. It was almost like he spoke to me telepathically, like he was speaking to me directly in my head. True to form for myself, I responded with, "The hell you are. Get out of this house." Like, Mama Bear mode was fully engaged at this point. And this being chuckled and got as far as saying, "Not without," before I tackled him right into one of the dressers in the room. There was definitely weight to this thing. We fought, and eventually I managed to pin him, and he said, same as before with the telepathic type communication, "I'm taking them." And I said, "You have to get through me first. Get the fuck out." And I proceeded to forcefully drag him, whatever, down the stairs, through the dining room and into the kitchen. The whole time he's shrieking, and I can feel my fingers digging into the fabric of the collar and pulling at some of the hair that I had ended up grabbing along with the collar. I could feel my other hand on the wooden handrail on the stairwell, so he wouldn't topple down the stairs, because I felt like if I loosened my grip on him, he'd be able to get free and turn into a cloud of smoke again. In the kitchen, I could feel the handle of the door as I swung it open, repeating to this being, "Get out, you are not welcome in this house." And I shoved him out the door. I could feel the effort it took to shove him, and I could feel the bite from the edge of the doorframe, where I put my hand out to keep from falling out the door with him. And I yelled, in that loud thought way kind of thing, "Never enter this house again." And I shut the door and locked it. The weird part was, when I woke up the next morning, the house felt lighter and looked brighter. I don't know what the hell I dealt with, but I've never experienced that kind of thing before, even though I've experienced enough lucid dreams, induced or not, to know that this wasn't a lucid dream. So let's talk about how to recognize that you are getting into a state where you'll be able to astral travel. First, vibrations. Your body will begin to feel like it's vibrating, or it'll feel like a kind of buzzing feeling. And then your heart rate will begin to increase. Usually, it'll kind of feel like you've just sprinted. And then you'll start to hear sounds. Maybe a buzzing sound, chirps, ringing, bells, rumbling, and they'll intensify briefly. You'll notice a numbness, and it'll probably start in your arms or your legs first, and then the rest of your body. You won't be able to feel the surface that you're laying on, and your arms and legs won't move at will. You'll notice an alteration in weight. You'll either begin to feel as light as a feather and feel like you're floating up, or you might feel super heavy, like you're sinking down into whatever it is you're laying on. Whatever the direction, don't freak out and just go with it. Once in the astral plane, you'll know because you won't be able to make any changes to your surroundings like you can in a lucid dream or a regular dream. So to get to that stage, what are some methods that we can use? The first one is what some call the Monroe Institute method, and others call it the mind awake, body asleep method. Get comfortable and relax both physically and mentally. Allow for your body to fall asleep while your mind stays awake. And this is kind of a half-sleep state. Deepen this state by prioritizing mental sensation. Pay attention to the presence of vibration. You should start to feel it the deeper you go into this hypnagogic state. Relax into the vibration. Allow it to kind of jiggle your subtle or astral body loose from your physical body. And focus on moving your arms and legs of your astral body. And when they feel loose enough, try to drift out of your physical body. Another method that you can try is the silver cord method. Find a quiet spot, lie down, get comfy, and clear your mind. Relax your body and focus on positive thoughts. Visualize a silver cord connecting your physical and astral bodies. It can lengthen and shorten as needed and doesn't have a distance limit. Mentally affirm your intention for having an astral projection experience. You should begin to feel yourself starting to float or feel weightless. Stay calm and wait out any vibrating feelings or buzzing sounds. The astral realm should begin to materialize before you. Explore your surroundings. When you're ready to return, think about your physical body and gently use the silver cord to bring your awareness back to the physical body. There are a few other methods mentioned in episode 10 of this podcast, so feel free to refer back to those if needed. Now, we briefly went over some benefits earlier when we talked about what various cultures use astral projection for. Let's dive into those some more before I pull a tarot card. One of the main benefits is personal growth. Astral projection can be used to explore our inner selves, confront our fears, overcome limitations, and gain new perspectives. It's a great way to further develop spirituality, as experiences allow us to gain a deeper understanding of our potential paths, and it allows us a deeper understanding of the universe as a whole. It's also a useful tool for self-discovery. We can gain insight into what is at the core of our deepest desires, fears, and motivations, which we can use to help us make positive changes in our lives. We can also use astral projection as a way to connect with healing energies and receive guidance and spiritual support from spirit guides, ancestors, and other spiritual beings on the higher planes. So let's see if there's anything the cards want to add or what message needs to be heard today. Today we're pulling from the 88 Gemstones deck. Is there someone listening today that feels as if they've hit rock bottom? Like you've been struck by some force in your life? Maybe you're devastated by something major that just ended? I ask because for some reason I asked the cards to show me if there was anyone who would need to hear a specific message today. That's not usually what I ask for when I pull a card for episodes. Normally it's like, what do we need to know today? Or something like that. Anyway, out came the Ten of Swords. This card is super ominous looking. There's a feeling of defeat and finality and disaster. So what do you need to know? Judgment. Okay. Everything comes to an end. But know that there is a new beginning on its way. You're at a critical point in your life. If you haven't already, then it's time to do some self-reflection. You aren't being judged, but you do need to go before yourself. Work out what needs to change so that you are able to have this rebirth, like a phoenix rising from the ashes. It's time to make way for the new you. Okay, so how will you figure out and work on the things that need to change? Queen of Wands, reversed. Don't put your energy toward anything trying to slow down or derail your transformation. This could show up as insecurities, jealousy, manipulation. You know where you need to go and what needs to be done. Don't let inconveniences dissuade you from growth. But also be sure to check yourself. You don't want to stifle someone else just because it's your time to grow. Balance the chaotic energy of change with clear thinking. You got this. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with me today. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss out on future episodes, hit those like and follow buttons. When we reconvene in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be talking about Samhain. It's one of my favorite times of year, and I can't wait to share it with you. In the meantime, you can find me on Facebook, Witchful Journey Podcast, on Instagram at @_witchful_journey, on BlueSky at awitchfuljourney.bsky.social, and on YouTube, A Witchful Journey. I enjoy hearing from listeners, so if you pop in, say hi, leave me a rating, or if you're really feeling it, a review. If you'd like to contribute, donate, or buy my next podcast coffee, whatever you want to call it, check out A Witchful Journey on ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com. You can also send stories and experiences to awitchfuljourney@gmail.com. I'm April, and we are on a witchful journey.